Hello and welcome everyone to our another Optosys webinar, this time about going paperless. So welcome every one of you. Thank you for taking the time to assist as well as webinar. And of course, thank you being there in such a large number. So we are always very happy to give you those webinars, being able to transmit that information to all of you. And we hope that those webinars will give you a lot of options and information to actually allow you to better use Optosys all the time, and even more in those times that we're living right now. So my name is Eric. I'll be your webinar guy today. I'll be assisted by my usual assistant, Marc-André. Marc-André, how are you today?
Great, how are you doing, Eric?
Very good, thank you. So today we'll tackle a very big subject in that webinar. It's actually going paperless. It's I seen some of your names that you actually are our attendees today, and some of you already have the exam, I know, but you'll see here that there's a lot that we added in the exam in terms of features that will allow you to be more optimized with Optosys. But also for the one who doesn't use Optosys exam module, what's the ins and outs of going paperless exactly? So I can tackle the whole thing together today. So as usual, the webinar will be recorded on YouTube. Is that right, Marc-André?
Absolutely, and while you're on our YouTube page, please take the time to follow our page. We'll be posting more and more videos. Could be webinars or it could be instruction videos on how to set things up in Optosys. We will be getting very creative during the following weeks.
Thank you very much. And yes, we try to share as much information on that channel. So if you want to register, you'll be able to get all the updates. And I think that our attendees today, Marc-André, can actually ask questions during the webinar.
Absolutely. So I'll be managing your questions. If you look on your GoToWebinar section, you have a setting with an arrow, which you could click on to open a question window. And while you could ask your question on this, I'll be interrupting Eric to ask your question.
And yes, please interrupt me. Of course, I always love to answer all the questions that come from pretty much everywhere. So please go ahead and ask Marc-André a question. He might either answer the question right away in the forum, or he could actually interrupt me so I can answer the question for everyone to hear. And don't forget that we also have a little question period at the end. So you can always keep your question for the end. We'll also allow you to actually ask your question live if you wanted to. So this is how we're going to start the question. Oh yeah, we need to start with a short poll, Marc-André. So we have questions for our attendees this afternoon. So what is the question, please?
Here we go. So you have a question on the screen. Are you currently a user of the exam module? So simple yes, no question.
Very interesting. So here you want to know how many of you already have the exam. It might be the exam that you've done maybe 5 years ago or more that you want to optimize, or maybe you don't have the exam yet, but been thinking about it, and now might be the right time for you to switch to a paperless environment. I'm very curious to see what is going to be the result of that poll. So please click on the little white dot to answer the question. If it doesn't react when you click on it, just minimize the page, not entirely, but to its normal size instead of being maximized, and then you should be able to go ahead and click it. Perfect. I think that we have a lot of results, Marc-André.
Yep, so I'm going to share these results on the screen. There we go.
Very good. So it's actually not very far from each other. So most of you already use the exam. So that's very interesting. It seems like the one that are actually more eager to have information in the exam or use it, but it's a good thing. Of course, it will allow me to go a bit deeper maybe in some of the information, but don't worry, all of you that doesn't have the exam will still have the knowledge of how to implement the exam, because it might be something that we need to revisit after a certain number of years. So thank you for the poll, Marc-André. It was very interesting. So let's take a look at how Optosys helps you going paperless. So first of all, before we delve into the details and the actual solution in Optosys, let's take a look at why is going paperless for the one of you that is not paperless yet. So the advantages, the big things, well, no more loss or misplaced paper files, because the whole point is to actually scan everything in and just not having any paper files anymore. Let the computer do the work. So that's the main thing. So let Optosys make all those copies of final RXs into the patient's RX for dispensing. Don't do it yourself. Actually, also gather all the information in the exam and create those referral letters. So once again, it goes with the third point, which is no data entry duplication. And then again, less errors, because eventually, when you're going to actually put your final RX, no one will touch the final RX if you actually do your lab orders through B2B, let's say to Essilor, Nikon, or Hoya. So actually the lab, what the RX they're going to see is the same one, not out. Nobody actually touched it since the final RX. So it's a very great way to make sure that nothing is actually misspelled or anything like that. And of course, a practical thing about going paperless for everyone is to free up space in the office. All those drawers with all the files in it, or those cabinets, can be gone once we'll actually have most of our patient files uh, electronic in the system. So once again, we'll actually free up a lot of space around the reception area, I guess, in most of your clinics. So yeah, only good things about going paperless. However, there's some challenges that comes with it. And I know that a lot of you actually did move to a paperless environment, so you know which of those challenges means. So first of all is the change of the office flow. So when a patient comes in the office, right now we have a paper files actually go on a certain pile, or maybe it actually already taken from the cabinet and actually put on a place on a special file or special pile or special door or whatever in the office that flows with the patient around the office. So we have to make do without it. So that's a big change in the mentality and our habits. Also, the scanning of the files. So if you actually have a lot of files right now on the paper and you want to go paperless, you'll need to come up with a solution to scan your files in. So either we hire someone to actually scan everything as soon as possible. We can also always scan also the day before the appointment, or the morning before the appointment, or in the weekends. So there's a different approach. We can actually do that depending on the goal that you want to attain and how much time you're giving yourself to do it. We also have the habits of the files that we have to replace with searching in Optosys instead. So yes, right now we kind of, when having a phone call, we kind of normally go to the patient file and search for it and say, put the patient on hold and go for the file. However, when you're going to go completely paperless, there's no such thing as searching for the file anymore. So we'll have to actually have a system that people understand that everything will be on a computer, where to find them, and also so reproduce all those little notes and tags and colors that we've put on certain files depending on certain criteria or labels we want to attach to a patient. So that will need to be replaced at some point. And then there's the hardware shopping list. What I mean by that is that it changes the flow, but also changes the tools that we'll need to use every day. So by example, the first one is the pre-test equipment. Here I should also mention the cables also, by the way. So you might have no pre-test equipment compatible with Optosys. You might have some or all of them, but even if they're compatible, you might need a cable to connect that pretest equipment to the exam. The whole point being that when you're going to do a odor fraction, telemetry, visual field, that will actually go directly into the exam, all the values and the visual field PDF. So in order to do that, we need a special cable depending on the equipment. So that needs to be purchased. Also, there's a computers that you'll need now in the exam room and the pretest room, because once again, if you have pretest equipment compatible. And we have the printer and scanner. So here it's a win and a loss, because you don't need the printer to either print a label or the patient file when the patient comes in, so that you can discard. But you might actually need a printer in your exam room if you want to give the patients their RX or their prescription for their drugs or whatever. So there's something to be actually think of in the terms of tools that you're using in the office, and what we won't need anymore, what we need now for now on. So there's a lot of thinking to be behind it. It's not just a template, going paperless. Do we have any questions so far, Marc-André, regarding the advantages, but also the challenges?
I got a couple questions already, but we will proceed, and as you go, some of these will be already answered.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, no, not a short pause. So the Optosys solution. So Optosys will provide a complete tool set to allow to a smooth paperless transition. But and when we say smooth, is that we have everything that you need. So there's all the adaptation, sorry, for the software has already been done in Optosys. So you don't need to actually bend Optosys to make it work. All the features are pretty much there. Also, it allows an extended customization level because yes, all the templates we see today, the letters and the forms, and even the visit types and so forth are completely customizable in terms of size, information in that, and colors and components. So you can do pretty much what you want in Optosys. Of course, you have a best practice scenario where you can always go around it to actually have something that you are the one that wants to do it. There's something specific that wants to be retained for your paper habits. And of course, there's multiple options to optimize a new fileless system. So we'll see that we have a lot of tools to work with. And some of them are listed here. So we have the agenda sub-statuses. So we'll see that we can have statuses, meaning the patient is not only arrive or no-show or confirmed, it can also be in pretest or in exam room or in dispensing. Then we have the patient file hint icon. So some of you disregarded now that you have this for a long time, but we have some icons on the top of the patient file that actually says a lot about a patient, and sometimes sufficiently enough so we can have pretty much an idea about what kind of patient we're looking at. We have the exam summary, like a big note for the exam. We have the templates themselves, which will be the main focus of our discussion today. We'll have also the electronic form, which is very, very practical and very in demand actually right now with all the non-contact situation that we have nowadays. And of course, the referral letters that will be generated from the exam. So a lot of tools here we can actually use to make our process and change as efficient as possible. And then, of course, we'll take a look at the average patient. So we'll see how Optosys can help you, but not only you as a user of Optosys, but also for the patient. So they'll be able to use it at home when you arrive, when you pre-test the patient, examine the patient, and of course, when you're giving out their RX or being dispensed. So we'll see all of that. So we'll keep that in mind. And for that, we'll take a look at the features of the exam that allow us to be more effective than, let's say, paper. So one of those features is the pre-testing equipment integration that we just talked about. The default values or previous exam starting point with the exam. The compare mode, previous results. You can see all the previous years worth of certain values. The action buttons to quickly import, export, or copy RXs within or outside the exam. And of course, the referral letter that will populate themselves using the exam information. So let's go right now in our good friend Optosys program here, and we'll take a look at all those details together. So first and foremost, if a patient has an appointment today, what you can do in advance for that patient is to go on the actual patient file and send them. And by the way, I'm doing that per patient, but I can also do that from a selection list if you want to do all your patients of, let's say, next week at once. So in the form, using the communication module, you can send a form to the patient prior to the exam. Could be 5 days, could be 3 days, you decide. It could be different from any patient. And you can have multiple forms also, by the way, you're not limited to only one. And that form, the big advantage here is that whatever the patient submits in terms of answers in that form that will be received by them by email and completed at home, is that it will be then possible to use it and copy it directly in your exam when the patient comes in. So a lot of answer questions and time in the office can be saved if the patient actually answered those questions at home about their chief complaint, or revision, medication, allergies, whatever provincial number like OHIP, MSP, Alberta Healthcare, and so forth. So there's a lot we can do with that. Also, you need to know that if we can send that to the patient's email address, which is the fact by default, we can also send it to whatever email address. So if you have an iPad in the office or tablet, you can actually send that form directly on that internet device. Of course, I don't know exactly how it's going to pan out with all that non-contact thing, but at least you know it's an option to do it. So that's for the form that we can give to patient prior to their appointment on the same day sent by email. And yes, by the way, the form, the result from the form goes directly to the patient file. You don't have to manage it through an email or whatever. It goes directly into the patient files. You don't have to do anything. The patient will do all the work. And then yes, the patient will eventually arrive. But see here, we have options. So I don't know if all of you uses the substatus and Optosys, but in a paperless environment, it might actually allow you to be much more precise in terms of, let's say, a doctor who's pretty much lost on who do I need to call. So of course, looking at the agenda, if we have a specific caller for a patient that's been pre-tested, then we'll know what caller would that be. And same thing for the optician. So if they know who to actually take care of because they're coming out of the exam room and need to be dispensed, we can actually use those callers, checked out, extra testing, and so forth. So you can actually pretty much use all the types of substatus that you want because each of those are completely customizable and you can create your own colors that go along with them. So using the same color information that we have on the status of the exam, of the appointment that we have right now, let's say a no-show, arrive, confirm, well, we'll be able to use the same type of colors around the appointment to represent if the patient is in the office, in pre-testing, in the exam room, or maybe even waiting for the exam. So there's a lot of information we can get from there. So let's going pre-test. So going pre-test means that the staff at the reception will know that the patient will be ready for pre-test, let's say. So in the pre-test room, when we're going to walk in with the patient, of course, we're going to go on another computer. So see my appointment, I've changed color now, so my patient is ready for pre-test. So I can actually right-click on it. And you know, since the last two version of Optosys, we now have the option to add an exam or to open up an existing exam for the patient. So for pre-testers, they will be able to add an exam directly from the agenda without having to go in the patient file. And for the doctors, on the same day, they'll be able to actually right-click on their agenda to actually go and complete today's examination chart using the information that the pre-testers provided. So from here, we'll be able to click on Add Exam. So when we do so, Optosys will just generate the actual grid here. So we know what time of appointment the patient had. We know what template we want, depending on our default, that we can now put in Optosys on their default values. And now I'm just asking you, in a way, do you want to use the default values or the values of the previous exam? And then you just have to check which one. So the one of you that actually doesn't have the exam yet, you have to know that the first exam in Optosys, well, since it's going to be the first one, if you scan, you'll actually start with the full values. But afterwards, when the patient will come back for his second or third or fourth exam, you'll be able to use information from any previous exam that you wanted. So just for this example, I'll start with default values. Let's say it's a new patient. So in the meantime, Marc-André, is there any new question arising from the flow in the office?
I do have a question, and I have quite a bit of questions in regards to the forms. And one we could answer simply, I believe, do we have a pre-exam form already made that we could simply implement into use, or do we have to create our own?
Well, for the form that I took, I just minimize that for now because if you have a lot of questions, maybe I didn't actually put enough details on that form. But in the form, yes, we have templates. The complication comes from the fact that yes, we'll be able to import the information from that form to populate most of your exam. However, it really depends on your exam. And since none of you have the same template, and I know because I saw most of you, it will be very difficult to use just a normal template and make that template speak to your exam in a dumbed down way. So here we'll actually need to make sure that all the information from the form will talk to the exam. The best example I can give is, let's say that chief complaint or result for reason for consultation. If some of you might have a free text, some of you have a drop-down menu, some of you have a list box. So if you actually use a different components in the letter, it won't copy over in your exam. Of course, if you just want to be able to see the form and not use information from the patient, because some doctor says, well, I don't want to need to translate all the information in my exam from the patient because I imported everything and I had to modify it because, well, it's a patient that actually specified that my wife think that I'm not seeing my TV from up close and blah, blah, and you want to translate that into myopia. Well, you might actually need to the letter to talk to the exam, but most of the time you do, and that's where the customization will need to be done. So I hope that I answered the question, but we'll tackle that in a bit more details right now. So this is one of the numerous type of templates that we have in terms of examination. It's a pretty complete one, you'll see, but also it's pretty well made at the same time. And most of our templates are actually more, let's say, functional from the get-go. But all of you actually all have their own ways of doing that optometry thing, so we can always modify it and really make it yours. So the first thing I wanted to show you is that we have a lot of different components to work with. We have drop-down lists. And for the one who doesn't know, we can actually now allow free text in that list. So you're not bound to use the components in that drop-down list anymore. You can type it whatever you want. You'll still have the ability to add more to that list. But if you want to type in something that you don't want to add for future patients, now you can do it for all of the fields. And we'll see on our webinar on Thursday how we can modify our exam to make it so. And yes, we have the webinar Thursday about the design of the exam. We also have checkboxes, which is yes, no, simple yes, no answers. We have free text, which only allows you to free text. And of course, you can actually go beyond the size of the box. We also have a list selection. So if you want to select multiple items at once, like medication, by example, this component will allow you to select multiple items in one box, which is not possible with the simple combo box. Here we'll be able to actually specify different ocular history. We have ink canvas that allows you to draw on something. So there's a lot of different components like that that will allow you to really make your appointment yours. One of the features that people love is the compare mode in Optosys. So here, see that I'm not clicking on the compare button. I'm just right-clicking in the merge, the margin on the side of the exam to actually allow me to compare the exam and specify with what I want to compare my exam with. So here I have, first of all, in that right-click, I have three options. You can compare it with a previous exam, a form, and a letter. So of course, the most obvious one will be the exam. So what I want to be able to do is to see last year's exam, let's say, and this year's, and see the evolution into the patient eye's medical situation. Of course, my screen is pretty small to accommodate your smartphones and your tablets and so forth, but you can understand that this is the same exam. It's just that one is last exam in red and the blue is today's exam in blue. And we have some little function to allow you to bring information from your last exam into the new one. So the one who doesn't know, it's actually Control, Shift, and K, the letter K as in kilo, to bring information from the whole section from the last exam. Shift K, Control K, sorry, will just allow you to actually import one of those fields and not the whole page. Then yeah, we can actually do the same thing here. So if I go to, let's say, eye surgery, and I do the little Control K thing, well, that same value actually came up with. Then we'll have the binocular vision, so then we'll be able to see the evolution and everything. So this is the compare mode, so allows you to see the previous information and the new one and import from there if you wanted to. And by the way, Control C, Control V, copy and paste also works very well. If you want, you can also compare it with the form. So that's what we just discussed following the question about the form. So it's very, we can actually give you templates of forms. We have a lot, but if you want that information to be brought over into your exam, you'll need to make sure that your components are the same. And ideally, you're going to use the information in your exam to create your form and just arrange it in something that looks good so that people will be able to actually answer those questions and they will be brought directly in your exam. And once again, if you have questions on the design and how to make the letter speak to the exam and vice versa, I will strongly advise you to attend our Thursday webinar that will allow you to actually see all the details about what is a data name and so forth. So yes, so we can compare or see actually our exam while we're seeing the form and actually importing information from that form in our exam. And once again, we can either import everything from our form or just some fields out of it. Marc-André, do you have any other questions on the forms?
Yeah, Eric, actually, I got a couple of questions coming in. Here's a good one. With regard to the form, I've heard that it requires sideways scrolling on mobile devices. Is this something that could be avoided? What width on the form would show up on a mobile device so you don't have to scroll sideways?
Well, that's a good question. It really depends on the mobile device. Unfortunately, no phone is the same exact size as the other, and we have nowadays small tablets, big phones, small phones. So yes, so if your phone is very small, you will need to actually scroll up and down and maybe left or right, depending on the pinch that you're doing to actually focus or zoom in so it's readable or not. So this is the case right now. So I'm going to zoom in to actually see more. But as I zoom in to see more, of course, I need to go side by side and maybe up and down also. And it's the same thing on a phone or a small tablet device. So yeah, what we could do, because we actually did some occurrences where we actually did it for little devices, and that instead of putting information on that all 8 by 11 sheet of paper, we actually limited the information to be on just one half or the first half of the page. So we actually put everything on the first half. So then even if you have a very small phone, you could see everything at once. You still can go on the right side, but you would only see like blank space instead. So all the questions will be one over the other on the left side. So once again, we would have to scroll left and right anymore. That was a good question. Any other good question like this one, Marc-André?
Here's a good one. Is the form module an add-on cost?
Yes, it is. Unlike the exam, which is a free add-on module, you can actually, if it's not already enabled on Optosys, we can enable it for free. The forms, since this uses our HTTPS B2B server and so forth, there's a fee of only $20 per month to use it, and that will allow you to send as many forms as you wish and have as many submissions from your patients as you wish. So one time. It's a one monthly fee for all the availability of all the forms that you want to do. Sorry. Perfect.
Sounds
Any other
good.
good
Thank you,
question?
Eric. So far, so good.
That's it. Perfect. Thank you very much. So yes, I think the form is something that's becoming very, very popular at the moment. I can understand why, of course, but let's just know that it only really works if you had EMR. So that's a big advantage. Bring over information from that form in your exam. And yes, on top of being able to compare your actual exam with the previous one or with a recent form, you can also see it with a letter. So whatever type of referral letter that you're doing, being either a TPA, either as a referral letter for ophthalmologists, either as a cataract, glaucoma letter, LASIK follow-up surgery report, you'll be able to create as many as you want in Optosys. And the great thing is that while you're doing your exam, you can actually take a look at the previous letters that you sent from Optosys. So that's a big advantage also. So you don't have to, if you need to see the last referral letter that you've done, don't have to actually get out of the exam, saving close and just reopen up something else and then go back in the exam after. You can actually see it on the same page. So you can also go back then if you wanted to compare it with the previous exam. It's just 2 clicks away, and then you'll be comparing your current exam with the last one, and then you can continue with the other sections of your exam. So that's for the compare function. Of course, I'll just uncompare for now so we can see the whole information and we can read information on our exam right now. Very good. So going down, so we've seen that section. What I wanted to go is for the previous vehicle. So we added a lot of features recently in Optosys. I don't know if we have, oh, well, there's one I wanted to show before that, sorry. It's the telemetry values. So here, first of all, is that, well, some of you might say, well, Eric, I know you can actually compare my exam to a previous one, but what if I want to go back in time? So if I want to actually see the last 10 exams, of course, we cannot see all of them at once because they'll be too small. But what we can do, though, is to actually select a specific group of data, like telemetry, but we can also do it for subjective RX, final RX, some of those anterior seg and so forth. And we can use those groups and compare them, but just the groups together. So by example, if I go to that telemetry section and I go to view previous result, I'll be able to specify to Optosys, I want to see my first telemetry values through time. And then I can see that since whatever 4 or 5 exams that we've done for the patient had 1415 and then 1416 and 1413. So depending which one we have today, we'll be able to appreciate if the pressures are going higher or lower, depending on the case. We also introduce a notion of normal value or abnormal value. So it doesn't work here, but we'll actually, if you had, let's say, defined that the normal IOP is between 10 and 20, then if you actually go over 20, it can appear in red. So that's something we can actually specify in the designer. And then, yes, we'll be able to import the patient spectacle. So if you sold the patient spectacle yourself, you'll be able to actually retrieve from your Optosys list of orders the spectacle that you've done for the patient. So you don't have to do the lensometry for that glasses. Then the auto-refraction can come directly from your auto-refractor machine. For the subjective, you can actually, if you wanted to copy the previous or the auto-refractor in your subjective, we can even create buttons like I did for the final RX to copy values from the subjective to the final. We can even do it manually if you wanted to, so it should be able to allow you to specify which of the groups you want to put in your subjective. So when you put it in your objective, it will copy exactly the same. Of course, this is done so you can modify it, but at least you don't have to re-enter it from scratch. Let's just go faster if you just do the basics. And then, of course, once you've done, you can always export the RX to the patient file, create that RX so we can use it for dispensing purposes or to print out the RX. And by the way, there's also a button if you want to print out the RX directly from the exam in your exam room, or if you want to print it at the front desk from the exam room. If it's the printer is mapped, we'll be able to do that too. Any questions so far, Marc-André, about the features of the exam?
Thanks, Eric. No questions so far. I'll let you know. And remember, if you came into this webinar a little later, this will be on YouTube.
Thank you for repeating to everyone that yes, my voice will be on YouTube again. So here we also have, of course, the famous anterior seg, posterior seg, where we'll be able to, once again, either draw on the eye. So if you have a eyelid issue, you can always draw on it. If you're as bad as I am at drawing, we also have little tools that allows you to actually specify a little nice, perfect shape if you want to look like a very good artist, and use specific pointers if you wanted to. You can have a choice of which type of pointers you want to use, and then you can actually specify what's the issue in the eyes of the patient. So instead of something having to actually have a very long note, image is worth 1,000 words in that case. And then you can specify default values, as we see all here, and we can specify something else. Now, if you have concretion, but you want to specify this is a severe concretion, well, just add, remember? So now that we have the free text available in those drop-downs, we can actually go beyond just the choices that we have. And by the way, if you create your exam correctly, I should say, you'll be able to actually import information or copy the OD information in the OS. so you don't have to actually rewrite everything if you have the same conditions in both eyes. And of course, it goes the same for the posterior seg, but we have the same principles once again in there. We also will advise you to use and to enter your therapeutic RX or your drug prescription in the exam. Why? It's just because we can create the TPA directly as an exam letter. So we'll actually use information from the exam, which is here, and put it directly in the letter. So the big thing is that next year, when you actually create your exam, you'll see right away that you prescribe something to the patient on a day because you have selected a medication with the dosage and the route and the frequency and the duration and so forth, instead of having to actually look into the files or look if you had created a letter or not. So you'll see all the information at a glance. And then, of course, you have your diagnosis and plan, and where normally you'll be able to specify what you've done or what's the issue. So if the patient has myopia, we can always specify that they need a new RX and so forth. And you'll be able now, with those action buttons, to create your referral letters. So using the touch a button, Optosys will actually read all the exam and matches the fields that we want in the letter. So then the ophthalmologist information, the patient information, if we had put any acuity, final RX, IOPs, keratometry, would actually have gone with it. You put your signature at the bottom if you wanted to. So that's a great thing. So you don't have to retype the information again. So here I have 4 letters that I've created in Optosys, but you can have a lot more if you wanted to. Normally people have a TPA, have a referral letter for ophthalmologist, a referral letter for a GP, cataract, a diabetic letter for GP once again, and maybe a exam summary or report, whatever you want to call it. So at least creating those templates in Optosys will allow you to have faster referral letter made, because you only have to actually add maybe a phrase like "thank you for taking care of my patients" with something at the end. Once again, the whole point is to actually give you as much automatic stuff as possible to actually make you more efficient. And by the way, in the exam, we can also add a provincial healthcare system. So you know that METSIS in Optosys. So whatever it's MSI, MSP, Alberta Healthcare, Saskatchewan, for the other province in Manitoba and so forth, you'll be able to select your service code along with your diagnostic code, and that's going to generate the claim right away. So the one of you that are still putting that on paper, you can put it directly in your exam, so nobody will have to re-enter the information somewhere in Optosys whatsoever. So since you're already writing that somewhere, or maybe you put a note in Optosys for the one that uses the exam, why don't you put that note directly into the right fields instead, and click on one button that will generate the claim for that to be sent out later on. So just a way to actually make it more efficient. And also, once again, less errors, because there's no data duplication that would need to be entered. And yes, we can actually do it for every province that have a METSIS system. Optosys.
Thanks, Eric. I have a couple questions.
Please.
While we're here, can you write multiple therapeutic RXs for one visit?
Ooh, that's a very rare question that I have, but yes, absolutely. So in the exam right now, as you see right now, I created my refraction myself because I mostly do one RX medical for every exam. I'll let the staff translate it in the reader if necessary, because we have that feature now in Optosys that do it for the staff. However, sometimes I might have a more complicated second RX, like a computer Eisen type of RX. So in that case, I'll be able to come into my available section here on the side, and I'll be able to select my RX glasses, final RX. I'll be able to drag and drop it in my exam. So I can choose where I want it to appear in my exam. And as you see now, I have copied the RX, where I'll be able to copy maybe my first final RX into my second one, and just modify one or two things and call it instead my reader RX instead. So yes, I'll be able to put as many as I want, because I can actually drag and drop until I be 2 tired to drag and drop anymore.
So it would be the same for a therapeutic letter
Oh yeah, sorry, it will be the
or
same. So
prescription?
here I only have one. So of course the final RX is the most obvious question, but it will be the same thing for the therapeutic. So I can actually add as much as I want. However, in that case, just like for the final RX, we need to adapt the number of RXs and which one we want to print and so forth that we want to send to the patient. Very good. Any other questions like this one, Nakali? It was a very good
I
example.
think we answered this question as well. If we have more than one medication, do we need to add other segments?
Yes, absolutely. So because none of those medication will have the same number of dosage, routing, frequency, or duration. So yes, actually, I would actually create one of those therapeutic RX for every drug. I'm going to do one for each, and then I'll be able to actually have as many printouts as needed. Or if you want, if you had already thought of it, if this is something that I carry very often, giving more than one medication to the patient, you can create your letters with already one, two, or three medication in them. It's just a matter of selecting the right letter at the bottom when you can actually click on those options that we have now in the exam.
Very good. I got two more questions. So, and this is a good one. Can we obtain the current templates you are using?
Yes, absolutely. So all the templates that we have, and they're all pretty much mature now. So been using by doctors for a long time. It's been now 10 years. We have more than 10 years. We have the exam now with Optosys. Yes, we'll be able to actually give you those templates, and we'll be able to talk about it, which one you prefer, what type of examination you want, if a very short one or a very complete one. So absolutely, those templates are completely up for grab from anyone who wants it. Just call the support line and we'll be able to help you out.
Thanks, Eric. And we might answer two questions with this one. Can a spectacle RX and a therapeutic RX be directly emailed to a patient?
Well, actually, no, not at the moment with Optosys. So letters, exam letters per se, don't have an email button like the invoice does or anything like that. So right now, no. But a lot of, and also because they need to be signed at the same time. So what people does right now is for the therapeutic to actually uh, sign it and just save it as a PDF and just send it out by email. However, for the final RX for the patient, this is something that can be done in terms of emailing it directly to the patient through the mail merge in Optosys. I don't know if you remember back on the day, but we did a webinar on that not very long ago, which I think is available on our YouTube channel. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Very good. So it's the mail merge and email blast webinar that we've done. So I'll really advise you to actually take a look on it. It will actually tell you how to create those RXs and be able to be sent by email. Thank you very much. Any other good questions or pertinent questions like this one, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're all very good questions, and I hope we get through all of them. But here's another one. How do you print an RX directly from the exam?
Ooh, that's a good one. So we have now, and I'll go there more in detail a bit later on into design. We have a option for those buttons. So right now, this one creates the RX. But if we want it, we can make those buttons create the RX and print it. And for the one out of you, it actually signs the RX. So as you know, we have now the option to sign using a password, a prescription in Optosys. You'll be able to have a button that actually creates and signs it. So you'll be able to enter your password directly from your exam. So the staff can then use it afterwards. And for the one who wants to print it, same thing. So it's going to create the RX in the RX tab of the patient and print it also directly from your exam. So you don't have to go out of the exam and print it. Very good. Very
Thanks, Eric.
intelligent question. Another one?
Yeah, I have one more here in regards to those buttons, so we might as well get to that one as well.
Yeah.
The action buttons allow the RX to be exported and signed, or export and print, but is there a way to export, sign, and print all together from the exam form?
Oh, people are asking a lot. No, not really. So No, not right now, but we actually asked for it, so it's actually in development right now. And I knew it was something to be someone will ask at some point. So yeah, we're actually working on it to have a button that will do the save, the sign, and the printing all together. But it's not there yet.
Thanks, Eric.
No problem. Any other questions, Marc-André, about the actual features of the exam in terms of
So
export,
far so good.
import,
So far so good.
compare? Okay, very good. Just wanted to let you know, though, in order to allow you to go faster, once again, we have always the option to use a little jumper to go from one section to the other instead of jumping using the mouse wheel. We also have the option to actually minimize all the pages. So as you see, everything will be closed, but if we can open one up, only this one will be open. And by the way, for the one who doesn't know, those little exclamation mark actually just represent that those sections have information in them. Could be very little information, just like a little drawing like this, but that will be sufficient. So just to attract attention and say, well, we have some information there. Do you want to take a look at it? Then we'll also have the options now to maximize pages which contains data. Principle here is mostly for printing out. So if we click on preview or print, it will only preview or print the sections that are open when we click on it. So if you don't want to print out sections that are empty, and I mean here completely empty with not even one default value, then click on that little button there that says maximize pages which contain data, and then you'll make sure that you won't print empty pages if you need to print a patient exam for any reason whatsoever. If you want, it's more rare, but actually something that we added not very long ago is to change the order of the exam. So if that particular patient have a very special anterior sag, and you might want to move it on top, so next year when you open up the exam, you'll see right away that the patient have very complicated or special anterior sag. So you can actually take a look here and say move up. And when I close it, if I go to the bottom, the top of my exam, I'll be able to see that my exam anterior sags has moved up completely on the top. So I'll see the exact grooves in here, whatever that is. So that's pretty much it. By the way, don't click on finalize. The finalize option will save, close, and lock the exam at once, which most of the doctors don't want to do on the first day. So locking means that you won't be able to, nobody will be able to modify it instead of you. So you want to just save and close, and that's going to be sufficient. And you don't want to show that to pretesters either. And at the end, well, yes, you'll have a summary where we'll see all of the notes that either you want to export from the patient exam, or you can write in directly in there. You can also see the history of all the forms that the patient submitted. You can see a history of all your exams that you performed with the patient, and of course, all the attachments and letters. So here, when I talk about letters, is those referral letters, OCT reports, and TPAs, and so forth, along with their maybe the answers from our colleague ophthalmologists or GP or other optometrists that actually answered back with their own letters, so you can attach them directly so you can have the back and forth from here. I just also wanted to mention, because I forgot, those little icons here, when you open up a patient file, and you don't have any paper files anymore to work with, please use those. Those are actually a lot of information there. So you have the whole summary. So you don't actually have to go in the exam to see the summary. Just go in the patient file and shoot your mouse over this one. And if there is a summary, the icon will be there showing you the actual summary. Then you also have the exam and the F. So that means that the patient had the last exam and the last form. So the orange F shows the forms. So you'll know that you had at least one answer. Could be last year, could be 3 years, but also could be 2 weeks ago. So you can see if the patient actually submitted their forms or not, just by putting your mouse once again over that and looking at the last form, which in that case was 2016. So for me, I don't even have to click on that form, double click on it, and blah, blah, blah. Just putting my mouse over it to give me enough information. So I need to know if I need to go there or not. So yeah, so right now I'm pretty sure that you might even have on your paper files some identification. They should say speckle patient, contact lens patient, and so forth. So here you'll have the same type of tags or labels to attach to your patient in that case.
Eric, I've got a good question about finalizing an exam, and it's so can you unfinalize an exam if it was finalized by mistake?
Absolutely. So here you're always going to have for a locked exam, you'll have the option to unlock the exam. So see here, this one actually locked because there's a little check mark here. So I can unlock the exam. However, only the doctor can unlock the exam. So nobody else from who actually the doctor performed the exam can unlock it. However, depending on how you set up Optosys, you have a certain time frame where you can unlock the exam. After a couple, maybe of month or week, depending how you set up your default values, you might not be able to unlock the exam anymore. So that's what I'm saying. Let Optosys work its magic and log the exam automatically after a certain amount of days, like 60 days, 90 days. You can always lock it manually, but then if you want to modify it, you'll have to unlock it and nobody else can go except for you. So it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but that's why I'm saying sometimes we're just easier to let Optosys do his work. Very good question. Any other questions about the exam, Marc-André?
Not for now. I have a good question here. Can you send us the link for YouTube videos? If you look in the chat, I sent a link towards our YouTube channel.
Very good. So yes, so we actually provide you with a link. Please put it in your favorite. If you're not maybe on your normal computer at the moment and there's no point saving that link, you can always search on YouTube for just Optosys solution and you'll find us very, very quickly. We now have an actual channel with an address that makes sense. So please go ahead and look for us and you'll be able to find us with all the pertinent videos that you're looking for. Thank you, Makara. Okay, so now that we actually went through the whole process here about the compare mode and previous result and action buttons and everything, I wanted to actually also show you the design itself. So the design is something that's very specific to Optosys, meaning that our exam is completely customizable. You could, if you wanted, I don't advise it, you could actually start from a blank slate of paper and create your own examination yourself. That will take a lot of hours, but of course the result will be exactly the way you want it to. However, it's always easier to start with something that already exists, with a normal flow of patient information, case history, medical history, ocular history, along with the binocular vision, the refraction, anterior seg, posterior seg, diagnosis and plan. So we have a lot of those different ones, and we'll take a look right now very quickly on what we could do. I just want to specify here, we don't have time today to go through the whole details of how to create an exam. That's going to be something we're going to be able to maybe go more in details on Thursday, where we have another webinar, a new one, that will just talk about the design of the exam. But in this one, I just want to show you the, let's say, the features available in that design. So if I go under the design mode, so that's under the admin. Once again, there's a lot of things we can go there, but I'll just ask you stay there for now. So under exam, under template exam, we'll be able to see all the templates. So you might realize here that those are not named for an actual exam. Those are names for the actual sections of the exam that we've seen today. So here we'll be able to just go in a specific area. And what's nice is that let's say, identification can be used for different exam templates. So you can use it for the top of your full, your contact lens template, your partial template. So every time you're going to make one little correction or changes in this one, it will affect everything. So you don't have to repeat your corrections 4 times if you have 4 templates. So that's very practical to use. And also, as we've seen with the therapeutic RX and the final RX, allow us to actually drag and drop all the sections directly in the exam and also have a default exam with certain sections and not others. So now that we see that we have some sections here, how do we understand or specify to Optosys which one of them and in which order we want them in our exam? In order to do that, we need to go under the master templates. And then if you have published your sub templates, your little section templates, you'll be able, as a collection, to actually bring it in different exam and letters or forms. So you can actually specify that in your full exam, you want your identification, your case history, your article history, and so forth. However, I don't want to have, let's say, my stereopsis or my Ishihara in this one. I'll just drag it when I need it because it's not for every patient I need to do those color vision testing. So that allows me to have a more efficient, because I don't need everything for all my patients, but also a faster exam to load, because once again, I have a bit less section that I would need if I would have all my section that I always need all the time on that big template. So more efficient, more performance. So going back here, so under my templates, where I have the collection of templates I can use for a lot of purposes, I'll be able to go in one of them. So I first need to select the one that I go, and I'll be able to click on that design template. And you'll see that you'll be able to recognize the template that I worked with you not very long ago. However, this time I cannot enter my values like sphere or cylinders. The only thing that I'll be able to change is the layout. So by example, if I want to make a certain field long or higher or whatever, bigger or smaller than what it is right now, I can really play with pretty much everything that I see right now in there. Same thing, if I wanted to actually change or correct something, I'll be able to delete if I wanted to. So by example, if in my previous table I don't care about a PD, I'll be able to delete everything altogether. And we'll see that we have a little toolbox here on the top that allows me to actually import information and put it in there if I want to replace my PD with something else like whatever, side height or base curve or whatever you want. So there's a lot of things that we can do here. It really allows you to do whatever you want. If you don't like that pale yellow color, go ahead and use your artistic values to change to khaki, maybe looking easier. The whole point, I'm just joking here about the artistic values, it's mostly to actually make it more visual. So by example, you can specify a color either around the boxes or in the boxes for all the pre-testing areas. So the pre-tester will know exactly where to go. Same thing for yourself. If you want to actually identify all the values that's coming from your ophthalmic equipment, just put them all the same background, and then you'll know exactly if it's something that pretesters entered or it's coming from the equipment when you started with. So all the tools are there to give you all the management availability that you might want to have in an exam. So here, yes, we have a toolbox that will allow you to actually put in labels. So those sphere, cylinder words are actually labels, are static there. You'll be able to import information from the patient file. You'll be able to put just text or whatever you want. Some fields will be specifically fields with numericals and decimals, like a sphere, cylinder. You cannot put a letter in those, and there's no point. However, you want to specify the axis will never have any decimals, so you can actually do that in Optosys. You're also going to be able to use drop-down menus and specify what's in them. So you'll be able to actually have even default values if most of your patients come for distance or everyday use glasses. So that can be your default values. We'll also be able to select products. So as you see, might be practical in a contact lens. Well, you'll be able to select which contact lens exactly that you want to have in there. Previous contact lens, trials, and so forth. We also have date pickers to select a date very quickly. We have check boxes that allows you to answer yes or no questions. We even have images. Images are pretty much only used in the letters, so you can put your logo and your signature. Those are static images. We have image data. So if you're in an exam and you want to import the patient visual field, let's say, well, you can actually import while you're in exam. So every picture will be different for every patient, every exam. We also have the ink canvas. I showed that to you earlier on with the interior seg and posterior seg and a little bit about the answer grid. So you can actually draw on a background image. And we have those action buttons. So let's take a look at them, because I think there's a lot of questions that, and it's normal that you guys have a lot of questions because it's a new feature in Optosys, but a very important one also at the same time. So this one is one of my favorite one is the copy group. So if I go and I create a button, so the toolbox action button can be created by drag and dropping those buttons directly in my exam where I want it. So now I created a little button that looks like this with a little arrow, which is the default image. And then by going under content, I can, under action, specify which action I want my button to do. So before, I think we actually doubled the number of actions we can do with that action button in the last version, version 42. So right now we can copy a group, meaning that if your subjective refraction have a group name, and I hope it does, and the same thing for your final RX, you'll be able to actually specify to Optosys that you want to copy your subjective into your final RX just by specifying which group want to be imported where. We can also specify the export to RX critical, RX contact was already there. Also, you can specify to export and sign an RX. So if you want to create a button that will export the RX to the patient file and also allow you to put directly your password into it, you'll be able to use that action. Using this export and print, we'll do the same thing, but instead of signing it, we'll print the RX. And starting the letter. So of course, I'm pretty sure that most of you that use the exam also have letters, or if not, it's a great thing because it might actually took 5-6 clicks before, where now only actually take you 1 click to create the referral letter. So there's a lot more action to be done. But now, if you want to configure those actions, just make sure that either you enter the text. So the text is just that. So if I create in this case a text about this one, copy auto-refractor. As you're going to see now, well, it's not very big, but it says now copy AR. So then I can, let's say I want to copy my auto-refractor in my final RX. That's what the button will do. But then we have to mention to Optosys, well, which group we want to copy over. So then we'll just have to specify the auto-refractor group name. Of course, we don't have any, so let's use another one just in case. So we'll take under the import exported copy the whole name in there, and then we can actually arrange our button, and Optosys will react to those name accordingly. So if you're not familiar with the group name, once again, please register to our webinar on Thursday. I'll be more speaking about the details of what your group does and everything. It really allows us to actually group certain fields together and specify to Optosys that those goes together so we can copy one group into another. And then we'll be able to map the sphere OD into the sphere OD, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, we can create those buttons either using text or using images, depending on your own preferences. So if you want to put your car as the image, well, go ahead and knock yourself out. You can actually do whatever you want. I would actually recommend to instead using our library of images, or you can actually Google whatever image that you want also to show there. That would actually mention maybe a bit more what it actually does. Very good. I hope that I answered some questions about the action buttons. So you have to go in the designer to create those and just answer the questions under the content for Optosys to know what you want to do exactly with that button. And you have a lot of action you can perform using that, along with exporting the MITSIS claim from the exam. Is there any questions so far, Marc-André, either about the design or the action buttons, maybe?
Yes, I've got a question, but I think we'll go and we'll dive deeper into this on Thursday. But here's one that says, if we make changes to a template, does it affect the information in the referral letters?
Well, yes, in a way. So it depends the information that we change in the exam. So of course, if the only thing that you do is to resize something or to change a color, no, it won't have any effect on the letters. However, if you change the type of the field, so you go from a memo box to a text box or a memo box to a drop-down menu, well, yes, because like I said previously for the form, we need to have the same type of components so the two documents then can talk to each other. So if in your I don't know, one of your referral letter, you have your final RX, let's say. And before I entered the use by hand, but now I created a drop-down menu. You actually have to go in your letter and copy that use field and replace the old text field that you had with this one. So then they'll talk to each other again. But yes, you're right, I'll go more in depth with the webinar on Thursday about the advanced training on the exam. But it does if you really modify the type of field, but it doesn't if you just change color or sizes.
Thanks, Eric.
Perfect. Any other good question like this one?
So where do we find the Optosys library of images?
Once again, just ask your support line for Optosys and we'll be able to share it with you. You'll be able to actually request maybe a certain picture if you wanted to, or we'll just give you the entire library. It's unfortunately not available online.
I've got another question, and maybe you'll understand this one. If you need to ask staff to order contact lenses, for instance, does that question get attached to the file?
Well, actually, I think what it means is how do we ask the staff to go through with it? Well, it's just like the order. So what you can do, there's two ways of doing it. So you don't want the staff to go into your exam to have to get there to know if they need to order something or what type of claim that they need to do or anything like that. So there's a lot of options when you're paperless. It's either you create a task for your staff to actually send out the contact lens, or we can actually just create a report at the end of the day of every contact lens they need to actually order, because you're going to have to export your contact lens RX to the patient file like you do for Spectacle. So at the end, we can always actually have a list of all the contact lens RX that you created, or the doctors created, I should say, during the day or during the week or whatever, when you want the staff to be able to double check that they created all the contact lens orders. But that's, once again, part of the whole paperless project to make sure that we tackle every little thing that we're doing on paper that will need to be done on the computer.
So here's a good one, I believe. Can you create a task from the exam, or do you have to exit out of the exam first?
Oh, that's a good question. So actually, yes and no. You can, let's say we're doing an exam, which is not the case as understand, and we all understand it, we're in design mode. But let's say this was an exam, you can always minimize your exam while you're in it, and then go back to the patient file and do whatever you want. So you can do a task, you can do an invoice if you wanted to, you can send a communication. So you can always go back in your exam without having to close it. And then you just have to reopen Optosys to see the actual examination and continue the examination. So no, you cannot create a task from the exam, but you can minimize and just do the task and go back to the exam. That was a good question. Very good. So yes, so with the designer, we have a lot of tools to work with. So we even have an alignment here toolbox on the top, so you can actually align different fields together. So if you're not very good, very precise like I am, you can actually use Optosys to do the work of aligning everything to make it look good. You also have properties for each field. So since Optosys doesn't know exactly what this is in. So of course you know because it says sphere and it says OD, but Optosys doesn't know this is a sphere OD. So here you can actually specify for each of the fields that have numerics or text different properties for each field. So in that case, the sphere will always display the sign, whatever it's positive or negative. We'll also display two decimals all the time. So if you put 1, it will do 1.00. It will have a step value of 0.25. So every time you go up with the arrows on your keyboard, instead of actually putting 0.75, you can up, and you'll be at 0.75. You can even specify minimum default or maximum values. So that meaning that if you actually put in by mistake 250 instead of 2.50, Optosys will just not save the exam and show you where the error occurred. We also have a new thing called the normal min and normal max. So in your case, if you have a normal minimum for a sphere, minus 15, for you between minus 15 and plus 15, it's normal values. And beyond that, it's normal. Optosys will actually, if you have, let's say, a -16, will actually show you the -16 in red. So it attracts your attention and say, well, it's either a wrong reading or wrong entered information, but there's something that it's not a normal value. So that actually can bring your attention to that field. So as you see, there's multiple tools that will allow you to use to really achieve your ideal template as much as possible. So we don't impose anything on you. And of course, we can always give you a template that works from the get-go, but the goal is to give you all of that power to enable your own way of doing the exam. So you don't have to adapt to Optosys. It's really to make Optosys adapted to your own way of working. Very good. So once you're finished, of course, you can save and close. And once you're happy with the result of your template that we just modified, you can publish it. Publish means that you want to make the changes that you've done effective for the next patient. So it's like a book. So as you're actually writing a draft, you don't want people to read it, but when you'll be ready, you can publish it and then see if people are reading your book or not. Um, Very good. So that's pretty much it for the design of the Optosys. So as you see in the design, we took a look at a lot of different ways, and there is a lot of stuff to be done in the exam if you want to really modify the exam extensively, but at least you know Optosys can achieve it. So now that we took a look at how to create an exam for a patient, how to work it, what's the features, the compare, and the design and everything, what's really that going paperless project now? So you need to invest for the future. What it means is that will actually come to explode later on in terms of value and advantages. So that's why you need to actually choose a project leader. There's no point having multiple people responsible for the same project. Just choose one person that really knows what the exam should be for the office, and that person might actually get a lot of people to work with that project leader in terms of creating some list or fields or sections, but at least we'll have one actually drive the whole project, because it's a project when you have multiple doctors in the environment can be a lot of back and forth and take it very time consuming. Then talking about time, it is a big time commitment, because well, you'll need to actually not only design a little bit the template we're going to give you, but also you'll need to learn about the exam, and you'll need to actually learn to use it, because like everything else, the first thing you're going to do for the first time of your life, if you've never been in a paperless environment before, it's very, very different, and you need to get used to not only the doctors, but yes, they're maybe the one that are more affected, but also the staff, because they need to be comfortable with the change. So changing their whole habits, the whole way they're looking for um, files, and losing some of their information about some notes that they've put on the top of the files and so forth might be something of a big change in office. So yes, and scanning can be actually a lot of stress on staff. So you have to think about all the changes in the comfort zone of your staff and for the doctors too. Of course, the exam is always a work in progress, meaning that it's always going to be living animal in a way, as I call it. So as you're going to grow, maybe your practice will change a little. And right now, our practice changes a lot and very quickly. So Optosys will be able to change with you because you have so much customization options. And of course, you might actually have understood that so far for the one of you that have the exam, but maybe not the one who doesn't, is that the returns of its investment arrive when the patient comes back with their second Optosys exam. So the first exam will be much longer. Why? Because we need to actually enter all the information from scratch. Either you scanned your old file as PDF, or maybe you didn't, but all the information about their medication, case history, and everything will have to be entered on the first exam, no matter what. However, when the patient will come back from their second of this exam, well, then that's where all the magic happens. So you'll be able to either start with the complete information of the previous file, just choose which information from the previous exam you want to bring over. You'll have all your summary notes. The forms will help you out. So a lot of value will actually come into play when the patient comes back for their second Optosys exam, and that might only occur in 1 or 2 years, even if some patient might return in 6 months. But there will be a good year or two before you get all the advantages of the exam. And believe me, no doctor that I know would ever come back to a paper environment when they come to a paperless environment before. So there's a lot of advantages to it, but you need to know that's a long-term commitment, and that all the uh, um, investments will come very handy, very at some point, and that's going to be, you'll see the advantages of doing so. So that was my little speech at the end. So just not to downplay how big of a project it is, but I think that nowadays it's something that's not only very fashionable, but also some might actually say that it's need to be pretty much mandatory in our new world. So do we have any questions, Marc-André, or comments maybe from our attendees?
I got a couple questions if you want to get to those. We have here, can you show how to copy info from form to exam?
Well, yes. So in the patient file, so first of all, it's implied here that the patient create or submitted a form from whatever home or from your tablet in the office. So when you'll be in your exam itself, so you have to open up your exam as usual. However, knowing that before the patient submitted their form, you can actually go in the compare mode. So you right click in the margin, the blue margin of your exam, and you go into compare mode, but this time you're going to compare not with the previous exam, but with the latest form. And it's only in that compare mode, having the exam and the form side by side, that you'll be able to copy the information over. In order to copy the information over, you need to actually do Control, Shift, and the letter K, all three at once. And that's going to bring all the information in the letter into your exam. Of course, if you map them correctly. And if you don't want to bring everything over, but just some fields out of it, just do Control and the same letter K. And that will just bring whichever field that you're actually putting your mouse over. So compare mode, compare with letter, Control Shift K for the entire stuff, Control K for a field by field copy of the information in your exam. So the whole point here is to make sure that you know what you're bringing over. So before you actually bring over, so you can see the letter beforehand. I hope that I answered the question. Do you have any other good one, pertinent
Thanks, Eric.
questions?
Sure. Let's go with some of these questions here. We answered earlier this question, I believe. Can you email the final RX directly from the exam form?
So not directly from the exam form, no. However, we can always do one mail merge in Optosys, which is just a button away if you have defined your email shortcuts on the top, but not directly from the exam, no, not yet.
Okay. So we have someone that said, please review IOP batch comparison again at the end of the seminar. This is very important.
Yes, it is. You're right. And by the way, you can do it for other stuff than IOP. You can actually do it for keratometry, final RX, and also images. So I'll give the insight to you right now. So from whichever page where you want to do it, you right click in the page, you go view previous result, and here I'll have my previous result for all my eyelid, conjunctiva, OS, NOD, tear, OD, and OS. So I'll see if one time we had concretion, crust, and so forth. We can even right click on those ink canvas and do the same thing, view previous result. And you'll see the evolution of my crust or concretion on my eyelid. And yes, pertaining to the actual request, right-clicking on the page where we have telemetry, we'll be able to do the same thing, view previous result. And then, of course, you would select which group you want to compare, and then you'll be able to compare them. However, if you try it in your exam and it doesn't work, it might be because your fields are not correctly designed. So once again, please come and see our webinar on Thursday about the exam design, the advanced design, and we'll show you how to create a previous result group. Thank you very much. I hope once again that answered the question. Any intelligent question
Thanks,
like
Eric.
this one, Marc-André?
Sure. I think that's it, actually. I think we went through all the questions.
Really? Oh, that's good. Maybe there are some people maybe are waiting to ask the questions themselves. I don't know. Let's see. Do you want to start the raise hand questions, Marc-André?
Absolutely. So pretty simple. If you see the little hand logo, you could raise your hand and we will give you a microphone, just not a physical microphone, but we'll activate your microphone so you could ask your question.
Yeah, so just use that little red hand to actually show us that you want to ask a question. We'll unmute you. Just make sure you unmute yourself also, and you'll be able to ask your question live for everyone to listen.
Live on our very popular YouTube channel, by the way.
Don't put too much pressure, Marc-André.
No pressure.
So
please review how to, we actually have one here. Please review how to take off the VAs on the RX to print out. Oh, that's a good question.
Well, for the VAs to print out, so of course it really depends if you want to print it out from the exam. So if that's what you mean, actually printing out directly from the exam, you'll need to know where your VAs come from. So like, let's go to an exam. And of course, I imagine that you talk about your final RX that you want to print out. So depending if you have the VAs in your final RXs, let me just go in that final RX. There it is. So here in this one, I do have the final RXs, the final RX with the VAs. So here I have, well, a button, let's say, that actually prints it or not. So of course, if I do print it from the exam, it will print everything here. So I'll have the option to, yes, I know I already exported it. So I'll have the option to either print it on a single piece of paper or double-sided, as we normally have. However, if I don't want to print those VAs out, just make sure that you have the VAs removed. Or if you never want to be able to print the VAs, we do have nowadays a default value in Optosys that will allow you to print those visual acuities or not. So going into admin, application, and default values, that's where we'll be able to specify if you want to print the visual acuities or not under patient one. So as you see here, so I'm under, once again, I repeat, maybe I went too fast, admin, application, default values. If you are one company database, just stay under the application level, and then you'll be able to uncheck print visual acuity. However, if you're a multi-company, you can always specify a different setup for different companies, and that's where you'll be able to, once again, for certain companies, specify if you want to print the VAs or not from default values. So you can do it either by default or just remove it manually if you're on the exam before you print it. I hope that I answered your question. Any other good one like this one?
No, that's it, and we do not have any raised hands.
People are shy, but it's okay. So if there's no more question, of course, I'll invite all of you to be there on our Thursday webinar. It's going to be a bit of a continuation from this webinar. This time we'll go more in details about the design. So I know a lot of you had questions on the design of the exam. So if that was a case, if you want to create those action buttons, you want to create those forms and make sure they have the same data names and such, that's what we're going to take a look at on Thursday. So we'll have more time to dig into the details of the design. But of course, we won't come back on what's an exam. Of course, it could be a more advanced type of webinar. So if, once again, I'm just looking with you, Marc-André, if we have any raised hand or questions, but it doesn't look like it. I'll just thank everyone for their participation, all our attendees. We have great success, good participation rate. So thank you very much. We're always going to do that for you, keeping you updated on all the changes and all the nice features that not be always used in Optosys in those webinars.
And also, thank you for attending. And we had someone say, I've been getting a lot out of these pandemic webinars.
I don't know if we could call them. I hope we continue afterwards anyway. And when everything will come back to normal, whatever normal is. And once again, thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone. And hopefully we'll see each other in a future webinar. And until then, well, thank you very much. Our support team is always there if you have any questions. So once again, thank you and have a really nice day. Bye-bye.